to By Way of Africa. I'm Mary Omatiga, and I am so excited about today's guests. You've probably seen her dominating on the court, maybe on TV breaking down plays, or maybe even at the White House advocating for foreign policy. She's booked and busy, but she's with me today. Two-time WNBA All-Star Chiney Ogwumike. Chiney, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. What a kind introduction.
So when you first went to basketball practice, your first practice wearing jorts, a halter top, Keds, did you ever imagine that basketball would open the door to so many opportunities for you?
Honestly, I didn't because, I always tell people we fell into basketball and then we fell in love with it. And it's always been about sisterhood for me. My sister was the first one, older sister Neko was the first one who tried it. And then she sort of carried us along on her back along the way. And we always looked at each other as teammates, not like opponents. A lot of people ask, oh, what were those backyard battles like? And I'm like, oh, we didn't have those because Neko was literally teaching the game like as a first generation Nigerian American, as every Ada, oldest of the family would. And so that first practice, we definitely felt out of place. But I do think, what they say, greatness is only on the other side of uncomfortable, right? You have to push yourself through some uncomfortable things and then you'll find what you really are made of. And so, yeah, the jorts, the halter top, all of those things were not ideal. But I do think that by finding the game, it transformed our lives and opened the door to so many other amazing things.
Can you talk about what this sport means to you and what it's given you?
It means everything to me. I think the number one thing is two things, actually. One, it taught me confidence. As a woman, particularly a woman of color, a woman of heritage, trying to find her place in the world in Houston, Texas, where your girl was never picked for dances and always was taller than everybody else and her pants were shorter than everyone else's. It taught me that there's a place that I belong, where what made me different is actually my superpower, my strength. That was being tall, that was being athletic, so I did not fit in. But now we look at a society where people that don't fit in are unique, special. That's your superpower. That's what makes you you. That's what makes you unique. And so, the first thing that basketball taught me was confidence. It showed me that being strong, athletic, woman of color, the importance of my heritage and pushing through. I always say I was blessed with the best of both worlds, the American opportunity, but that Naija spirit of determination. So basketball helped become a vehicle for me to find my best self and really become super confident in who I was. And then on top of it, it helped me find my family, literally sisterhood. Every team that I've been on, I've always pushed the idea of sisterhood, and that's what my team has become. Largely because I played with my sisters, right? From middle school, high school, AAU, college, even now to the pros, right? Always played with them. But everyone that plays with us knows that we approach the game as family, and everyone that our teammates as family, because we literally have family on the team. And that dynamic is so powerful when we are no longer, competitive, but more so collaborative. I think that's the value that sisterhood has been to me individually, but then also it's sort of been contagious in every space that I've been in.
I love that. You are very big on giving back. We'll talk more about your efforts in a minute, but was there ever a moment or encounter on your journey where you kind of realized, all that you just said, all that this sport has given you, the sisterhood, the family, wow, this has given me so much. I need to pay it forward. If so, what was that moment? And can you take me back to that day?
Sure. I was at college. I was at Stanford University and I had to shoot my shot, but I also had a lot of help. And I go back to sisterhood because a lot of the people that I say are not just role models, but they're goal models. I start with my older sister, Neka. Of course, I have an amazing mom and dad, but featuring my mom right now. And then, of course, I had two amazing mentors at Stanford. One, my Hall of Fame coach, Tara Vanderveer, who's literally the all-time winningest coach in women's college basketball. But then also my mentor was my major advisor, former Secretary of State, Dr. Condoleezza Rice. And so I was at a point in my junior year where I was really struggling. My sister had left for the pros, super successful, like one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Stanford women's basketball player ever. And I'm little sister that has to sort of carry that mantle and move it forward. I felt the pressure. On top of that, I felt the pressure of being a student. And so I was fortunate to, during my official visit, meet the former Secretary, Dr. Rice. And so when I was on campus, she sort of held me accountable for my experience. And she said, Chiney, these are your interests. What are you going to do with them? I was like, I kind of like international relations major. And so she's like, oh, I'm in charge of that major. That's great. I'm going to be on you. And so she was on me. And a part of that major requirement was to go study overseas. But the problem I found with the overseas program is that they are, typical places that you go. You go to Asia, you can go to Europe, but there's not really many opportunities to go to Africa. And to me, my primary specialization was Africa, and my secondary specialization was comparative international governance. And so I wanted to go spend time back home because I never really get that opportunity as a top tier athlete. I'm always training, practicing in school. And so I go, and I'm fortunate with the help of Dr. Rice and also my Hall of Fame coach to have this, my own creative session abroad. And when I was there, I served as a guest coach on a foundation called Access to Success. They held basketball camps in Benin City in Nigeria. So I was studying in Abuja under the Ministry of Petroleum for 8 weeks, and also the National Assembly Committee on Human Rights. But in my free time, I would go serve as a guest coach for this foundation. It changed my life because not only did the young women and plenty of young men there know who I was without even me being aware to my impact and my representation, but it was also just like realizing that what I took for granted, just being able to walk to a gym with no problems, now I'm no longer in those jean shorts and halter tops. I'm in the best of Nike, the best of Adidas. I have the world at my fingertips where a lot of these young boys and girls just wanted an opportunity that I have that I would never take for granted ever again. Particularly, there was this one little girl who was like, I can't come on the court. There's so many guys that are like, girl, let's go on there. We can school the guys. So having that perspective completely changed my purpose. I went back to Stanford, realizing that I was playing not just for myself, but for those people back home that just want an opportunity so that they can pursue their dreams. And I was just so fortunate to be born in the US where it was more of the norm, So that was the moment where my mindset shifted from the pressure to just purpose.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. So you attended the Global Africa Business Initiative's Unstoppable Africa event earlier this month, where you made a very special announcement about your new foundation, Queens of the Continent. Can you tell me more about why you decided to start this and how did you come up with the name?
First of all, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think of the name?
I love it. It's perfect.
No, that makes me super happy. So first of all, this is like, the reason why I decided to launch a foundation is because I've taken so many trips back to the continent ever since my Stanford time, when I was studying overseas. When I became a pro, it was my mission to go back as much as I can because I realized the power of representation and what it could be to inspire those on the ground just by going back home. So I became basically I was working so much with NBA Africa. I was in Nigeria, I was in Ghana, I was in Kenya, I was in Rwanda, I was in South Africa for so many different events. And then I started meeting so many great people, in particular through my experience the last year as a member of President Biden's inaugural White House Council on African Diaspora Engagement. We went on a trip to Lagos and Abuja, and I met so many great people. I'll never forget the conversations I had with the Tony Elumelu Foundation that had a whole bunch of young female entrepreneurs that just spoke about mental health and imposter syndrome and how even sometimes their partners are the ones that are telling them and questioning whether they can do what they want to do. On top of having the first ever, boys and girls NBA Africa, Academy camp. That's what we did when I was there on the ground. Like, there was so much to do. And I was like, how can I help? And I was like, okay, I have to do something. I have to create my own platform, because one thing I have realized, oftentimes when it comes to the lens of sports, because sports is just such a unifier, right? A global unifier. It tends to affect and, help young boys and men first when it comes to sports, because there are a lot of preconceived notions and still stigmas globally about what women can do, particularly through sports. To me, my goal was to create strategic investment and support for the young girls to pursue their dreams just as much as anyone else, and to basically put young women and girls front and center so they don't have to wait for programs to be equal opportunity. Instead, my foundation, and through the help of the sisterhood that I've developed, is prioritizing them so that they can pursue their dreams as much as possible. And lastly, I'll say this. Queens of the Continent is inspired by one of the trips that I made back in 2020, right before everything went crazy, to Queens College in Lagos. My mom went to Queens College. My aunties have gone to Queens College. So many family members have gone there. I went back there because it was important for me to see where my mom grew up, and the network of women, they call them OGQCs, that are global, because everyone knows like those alumni networks back in Nigeria are still super strong. And so I went back to Queens College, and I told my mom, I was like, hey, what was it when you went there? And she said, oh, it was just a couple hundred girls, and it was really just a lot of powerful women that have emerged from that school. I was like, so basically they invited me to speak to the girls when I went there. There were thousands of them, so excited about just someone coming to see them and to say, I see you. And then I went to the gym, and the gym did not have lights, had holes in the floors, but yet there were girls that compete, and there was a basketball team. And that was my mission, to refurbish their facility. And it sort of set the groundwork for what Queens of the Continent aims to do, to captivate the imaginations of the youth, to cultivate the jewels of the continent, which are young women and girls, and to be able to create opportunity for them through the lens of sport, which obviously affects the ecosystems of their communities. And so I'm super hyped. And basically it's taking the problems that might seem so small, that might get overlooked, and allowing us to create creative solutions so that everyone can live their best lives.
Wow, that is incredible. I can see that you have so much passion and love for this. How much work has gone into this? How long have you been planning this?
It's always been something that I've wanted to do. But I think the challenge for me is that oftentimes, when we look at the ecosystem of sports, when there are foundations, it's so simple, particularly for men in positions of power per se. NBA, NFL, you have $1 million contracts, and you can go and like allocate maybe a percentage of that to help foundations. For us as women, because we're now just the world is catching up to our power, right? We have to sort of redefine what it means to win, redefine what it means to give back, figure out different ways to be creative about finding ways to address these solutions. And I've always had this passion, and I've always worked with groups that aim to create solutions to this, which is, there's so many, like whether it's the NBA, the WNBA, NBA Africa, Basketball Africa League, there's so many great programs. Yet I have yet to see one that is strategically focused through, this amazing resurgence that we're having in women's basketball and women's sports overall, to help young women and girls. And so to be able to be a vehicle to address problems big and small, I'm talking about, creating mentorship networks so people can have access to be inspired and learn ways that successful Fortune 500 female CEOs have learned, and translate that information through the age of Zoom to the amazing young women entrepreneurs on the ground on the continent. Like, that is such a simple, small thing that can help build confidence amongst the next generation, or even greater aspirations, where we just witnessed a tremendously successful Olympics. But every time we read headlines about it, typically when it comes to the continent, a lot of these top tier athletes have had so many struggles in pursuing their dreams. We want to be a creative solution so that we can work with federations so that these athletes feel like they have just the same amount of support to compete at the highest level and represent their countries like we are so proud of them doing. So, and then on top of it, there's the infrastructure aspect, where there's a proliferation of courts. And obviously basketball, other than maybe pickleball now, is one of the fastest growing sports on the continent. But do we have the infrastructure to support what it means for young women to pursue sports? What are their needs health-wise? What are their needs education-wise, in conjunction with just building courts? So basically prioritizing the needs of young women and girls, but also, like, by doing that, you're also including the entire community.
You said the three pillars of kind of who you are athlete, analyst, and advocate. In following your journey, representation and giving back are at the core of every single thing you do. I've heard you say that impact is what motivates you. Why is this so important to you?
It's quite simple. My dad has a saying, and I just think about it all the time, because when I first came into the WNBA, my goal was to be a WNBA All-Star, Rookie of the Year, champion, all of those great titles that you can find on Wikipedia. But after I got injured, this saying comes to mind: every disappointment is a blessing if you allow it to be, because you have to have the perspective of positivity to move forward, and that will make you better. That will help your character. And so for me, when I dealt with major injuries, those turned into blessings. It turned into a platform for me to become a broadcaster and to sort of step into my voice and my power. And yes, it shifted from the MVP, Rookie of the Year, champion, to how can I create an impact? How can I leave the game in a place that is better than what is before, but it aligns with who I am? And as I started developing as a broadcaster while also being a full-time athlete, I started realizing that my voice is my power. My connection with people is my power. How can I make that, now as a, it's funny, I'm in like on the council with the White House, and I'm already like, I don't want to say it's frustrating at times because there's so much policy and talk. And I'm like, I'm an athlete. We want the reps. We want to go out there. And so basically trying to merge those worlds where you can have impact through your voice, but also follow through. I always tell people, like, if there's one thing that you hope people do, I always say, like, the analogy is in basketball, you have a shot, you got to shoot your shot, but you also have to follow through to give your shot the best shot of making it. Right? I have to follow through in my passion for the game, my passion for my heritage, my countries, my continents, follow through. And that's where the foundation is that, it's literally taking those words and putting it to action.
Yeah, so much of who you are is rooted in that Nigerian American heritage. What are some of the best values from your culture that have shaped you into the person you are today?
Wow. I mean, as I said before, being Nigerian American is the best of both worlds. Being Nigerian, you have that resilience, that determination, that hustle, that spirit. And also, most importantly, there's a joy to being African, no matter what you're up against, right? Like, you still look at life as a blessing and something positive, knowing that good things will always come. And then as American, you can truly feel like you're in the land of opportunity where your dreams can be actualized. All you need is your work ethic, and that's what they say. Sometimes you say luck, but luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And I feel like that's the merging of my two worlds. Preparation, is the American idea of the hard work ethic, but then opportunity preparation is my Nigerian, work ethic, but then opportunity is like the land of opportunity with America. And so for me, I just think that, like, being able to be myself unapologetically, to live authentically in my skin, to honor my culture, just know who I am, allows me to show up in spaces authentically as myself and not fit a prototype that is predetermined for me. That's what it's been like both on the court, but then also that's what it's been like in broadcasting. I started off broadcasting wearing like those cookie cutter, no shade to Calvin Klein, but like Calvin Klein dresses, and just like trying to do what I saw before. When I realized if I made a mistake, I was like, that doesn't feel like right. If I'm going to make a mistake, let it be me being me, So that's when I started wearing, my culture. This is Hanifa, an African designer. And so, like, just understanding that there's so many different facets from what you wear to who you advocate for, to how you prepare, to how you show up, that everyone's watching, My mom has a statement, or this quote too: tiny drops of water make a mighty ocean. The little things you do can turn the tide to something good.
Love that. Switching gears, I want to actually talk about your wedding because when you talk about being unapologetically yourself, I feel like that was the epitome of that. You got married almost a year ago, and I feel like you broke the internet with all of your beautiful pictures, but it was so refreshing just to see Nigerian culture in major publications and magazines. There were probably a lot of people looking at that and experiencing it from a distance for the first time. Why was it so important for you to have a traditional wedding and to do it so publicly?
I mean, it just is a part of who I am. I grew up, how it is. Even though I'm born and raised in Houston, Texas, you are growing up in a Nigerian household, and to be able to show what that looks like and how you can honor both cultures, to me, has always been important. And it's part of my identity. It's part of my husband's identity as well. And so, it was a lot in the middle of a season, but I'm just grateful to, like, what they say, it takes a village. And for me to be able to celebrate with the people that have helped me become who I am and helped him become who he is, just, how it is the Niger way. So, like, it was just a really fun experience, but also a great way to honor everything like, a lot of people see what they see on TV, whether it's me as an athlete or me as a broadcaster, but this was me as a person. And so to be able to express that was just the time of my life.
I love that. Switching gears, to your WNBA career and broadcasting career, a lot of people don't realize that you have dealt with injuries for the entirety of your pro career. But while you were dealing with those injuries, you were also honing your craft to become the amazing analyst that you are today. What have you kind of learned from this season of ups and downs?
I've learned that, you know, the word of the day is like multi-hyphenate, right? I feel like naturally as women, we are multi-hyphenate. You're expected to be, sisters, mothers, caretakers, reliable people in society on top of showing up in the spaces that you may work. And so I think that just for me, when it came to my adversity, I had already planned out, all right, society already questions the value of female athletes, or it questions the value of women in sports. Like, how do you reclaim that power? How do you show up in spaces that can fight against that? And to me, that was becoming a broadcaster, not just a broadcaster, but to become a broadcaster on the NBA. And through my knowledge and my preparation and my joy for basketball, it allowed fans who might have questioned, why is a WNBA player speaking on the NBA? When they realize she is right. You know what they say? You have to work twice as hard to get half as far. We put in the time, and that gave me the confidence to step into that space, dealing with a little bit of imposter syndrome. But over time, to see those barriers be broken down, to walk around and have so many people come to me and say, Chineys, yo, you giving it to Stephen A. You giving it to Perk. Like, I love that. You tell them, and then also they'll say, oh, and I went to your game this year. Or now they're coming these days and say, oh, tell me about Caitlin Clark. Tell me about Angel Reese. Like, the paradigm has shifted. And so it's just basically not getting deterred or disappointed or disheartened by where society is today, understanding that things can change tomorrow.
Going back to your earlier point about being multi-hyphenated, women have been told for so long that there's only one seat at the table, right? But your career, your journey is a testament to the fact that there are multiple seats at multiple tables. What does that mean to you?
Shoot, I'm going to take it further. We got to build our own dang table.
Mm.
And that table will be beautiful, because that's how everything is that are made by women, right? Like, you put your blood, your sweat, your tears into it, but you wear it with grace and poise, And so I feel like we're so conditioned to like fight for that one seat and then start looking around. But sooner, as I mentioned before, we realize that we're stronger being collaborative instead of competitive. They can't drown us out. They can't limit our opportunity when we create our own, and we look to ourselves as individual entities. The way I parallel it is that the shift in the WNBA really started happening around 2020, when we decided for our approach to the league, our sponsors, our marketing, to look to us not as a product of something else, but to something that stands on its own. And what it stands for is right now $1 billion business that is in its valuation, but when you compare it to something else, people will say, oh, you're doing nothing. But I feel like the same people that say that don't even have that type of thing that they're a part of. They're just criticizing. So like, once we have our perspective where we look to ourselves as standing on our own 2 feet, that's where we can really take ownership and do the game, our jobs, how we show up, justice. And so, yeah, like I sit even now in seat that I feel is too small for me, but that doesn't deter me from being here until I can create a platform where we can all win. And I feel like there's so many other women like yourself with what you're doing right now that are creating similar platforms, and the tide is completely turned. And so it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
I love that. So when you're not doing all of the things, you somehow have time to serve on the President's Advisory Council on African Diaspora Engagement in the US. Can you talk about your role and what it means for you to get to serve the US and the African continent to make a global impact?
To this day, it's like a dream role. As you know, like, my parents came with me, but they're super proud. It was just one of those things where I'm like, wow. because I'd previously served on the WNBA Players Association, but I'm no longer in the WNBA. So I was like, where's a way that I can lend my voice, my passion? And then President Biden announced that he was creating this council, and to be able to be nominated and then accepted as the youngest woman on the council, to me, blew my mind. And also I'm like sitting there with like billionaires and CEOs and, Viola Davis. And I just think it just shows the power of dreams that, we've shifted from this idea that success is only, as we know, doctor, lawyer, engineer, these steps up the ladder, but now we can sort of hop around. Creative industries matter. The global diaspora is powerful. Social media technology has brought us together in ways that we feel connected, even if we haven't met. I mean, we're literally doing this conversation on StreamYard, right? Like there's Zoom, there's so many capabilities to bring us together. And so for me to represent creative industries, which is music, entertainment, sport, which are powerhouse economies of the future, and also places where the youth are spending a lot of their, not only like passions, but also their actual consumerism, to me, it just is truly awesome. And so like our council, we have ambitious goals, but again, government policy takes time, but it's something that I think no matter who's in power is important to continue pushing for the next generation. Because the number I keep saying, by 2050, 1 in 4 people on this planet, in this world, will have African heritage. We have to find ways to tap into that wild potential. And I think it's already happening.
Janae, we have to wrap up. Before we do, I just have a quick little for the culture themed rapid fire game for you. Are you ready for this?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Afrobeats or Mapiano?
Oh, Afrobeats. Easy. Sorry, no shade, but Afrobeats. Let's go.
Name your top 3 Afrobeats artists of all time.
Wizkid, Burna. Ooh, those are 2. Who am I going with the third? Should I go Fela? I think we might just like classics.
Have to do classic.
Classics. And then like right now, Thames is like, that's my girl. But like
okay.
I grew up on Wizkid, or at least like as an adult. Burna, bruh. And then, yeah, Fela is good, and Thames, honorary 4th.
What Afrobeat song has been on repeat for you as of lately?
Thames, Wickedest.
Got it. Well, Chiney, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for your time, and the best of luck in all of your endeavors.